Welcome. Hi. Thanks for visiting the techarkit YouTube channel. Please consider supporting me by subscribing to this channel. I love sharing knowledge. However, it takes a lot of my time and effort. Please join the channel so that you will get early access to the content and special courses only available for the joined members, which are not available to the public. If you are enjoying my content, please spread the learning by telling your friends, family, and co-workers about the Tech ARKIT YouTube channel. If you are looking for the training, you can contact me on my email address aravikumar48@gmail.com. Are you looking for help in Linux, storage, and monitoring related projects? Join our WhatsApp and Telegram groups. Links are in description below. So we already see this, the cluster is already configured. We already have the shared storage is in place. Let's enable the HA and see that how the virtual machines get migrated automatically in case of disaster for any of the nodes. Okay, so let's go to the data center and click on the HA and say add. But here I do not have any virtual machines or the containers to add to the high availability. So what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to create a container. So before that I'm just going to download the template here. So which might be anything, you can just download it here. So I'm using the CentOS 8 container download. Now it's just download the container template which is exist on this Proxmox repository. So once it is downloaded, so you can see that the task is okay. Now we're just going to spin off the one of the container on the PVE1 and say add to that HA pair. Okay, so let's say host name, I'm going to give it here CentOS 8.cnt, which is a container, and provide the password, which is the default root password for the container, and say template and select in the drop down, select the template. So you have to select the proper storage, which storage you have the templates. Okay, then disk size, whatever it is. So let's leave the similar, and CPU codes, how many you want to allocate. So in this case 2, and memory, if you want to increase, you can say increase and swap also, and allocate the network. So which network you would like to utilize here. So I'm utilizing the ETS0 and VMbridge 0, and DNS name is techarkit.local, and the DNS server address is 192.168.29.1, and next, and verify the details and click finish. Now it just bring up the container on the PVE1 node. So it must be faster in a physical environment, but this is a virtual environment top of the another virtual environment. So that's why it takes a little time to create the container. Now you can see that the container has been created successfully. It is in place. So now you can start the container and migrate it, or you can also just migrate something like that. But so what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to not manually migrate it, add to the high availability so that it will automatically migrate here. So say VM ID here, and how many times you want to restart before it's migrate to the destination, and say how many times you wanted to try the relocate. Okay, then what is the status when it is migrated on the destination site. So I'm saying CentOS 8 container, the ID is 1002 for the identification. But you can see that at least the quorum hosts are recommended for reliable HA. So which says that two node environment does not work for the HA. So that's what it says. But let's test it out here. So how does it work? So you can see that there is a master is PV1 and the slave active configuration on the PVE2 here, which is idle. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to manually create the failover by disabling the PVE1's network connection here. Go to the settings and say network adapter, and I just disconnect the cable from the PVE1 here. Say OK. Now, if you go to the console and see that the network connectivity would be disabled, so you have to access the same from the PVE2. So the PVE is not reachable. Okay, you can see now the PVE1 is down already. Actually down. You can just reload it. So you could not able to see the console from PVE1. You can see that. So you have to see from the PVE2. So you can see the PVE is down. So PVE2 is okay, but if you check the HA configuration, so it still does not have any voting configuration that okay. So if the node 1 goes down and node 2 is inactive, so it does not make automatically the node 2 is master. Okay, this requires the another voting system in this place, so that if you have the three or more nodes, so that if one node goes down, then another node two nodes will vote for that one host, so that that host become a master. But here it does not have anything such a kind of environment that your PV1 is down. You can see that it is already died, but it does not make any voting its own self, so that it does not make its own self as a master. So that's why it does not come online. So the HA will fail, it does not actually move the quorum or the virtual machines or the containers from PVE1 to PVE2. So that's what the scenario here. So what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to add one more node to this HA environment and enable this HA on the one of the container and see how this does work. Okay, so you can see that the VM's configuration is still over there, but it is not still migrated. The master is PV1 only, but it is died already, but it does not replicate or it does not own the system its own self, so that PVE2 cannot be a become a master. Okay, so that's the configuration here. So let's go ahead and enable back the configuration here, settings, and say reconnect back this network. So it's already restarted. You can see that the virtual machine node is already restarted as part of the cluster, but it does not came up actually because the network cable is disconnected, physically disconnected. So that's the issue here. And see, it does not do anything. So the container is still on the PV1 itself. There is no communication. Now let's go ahead and enable the network on the PV1. So click on the network adapter and say connected. Still see that the disk is in PV1 only, the master is PV1. So it does not actually did anything. So it's not migrated because the PV does not become a master itself. So it does require the voting configuration. So for just I'm changing the configuration, but it does not do anything here. Now the network is enabled back. Let's refresh it. The PV1 should be online soon. Let's refresh and see the PV1 is online. Okay, now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to add the PVE3 into the cluster, so that it should make that high availability working. So before that, what you have to do is that if you already have any virtual machines or containers, you can shut down them and move those virtual machines to the maybe copy it to the another node or migrate them before adding to the cluster. But it does not like adding the cluster if you already have the containers or the virtual machines or the templates on this node which is already present. It is not part of the cluster. So what I'm doing is that I'm just destroying all of the virtual machines and templates and containers from the PVE3 so that I can easily add this to the cluster. So let's see. I'm just destroying one more virtual machine here, and I left two more here. One is template and one was another virtual machine, and I'm just purge them and delete them. So one more container here. Let's delete this as well and purge it. Same as. So now the PV3 is ready to add to the cluster, which is already have the few local disks. So now let's go to cluster and say join information and copy the information here. And let's go to the PV3 and say join cluster and paste that provide key information and provide the password. And now you can see the peer cluster service is going to be stopped and restarted back so that it would be part of the cluster. I can see the PV3 is already part of the cluster. Now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to enable the HA on one of the virtual machine or the container. Say how that virtual machine or the container should migrate from uh, the in case of any disaster recovery or any disaster happens, how this VMs will recover or replicate the data or they migrate the data from one host to the another host. So okay, let's see here. So I do not have any virtual machines or any containers on the PV2 and PV3, but I have the data and the shared storage is also mounted on the PV3. You can see the PV3 contains the data, which is the NFS store. So now let's see, which is already have the container on the PV1 here. Let's say HA, and I'm going to delete the existing part of this HA configuration here for the particular virtual machine, and I'm going to add the new HA configuration here. So just create the one group and say group name, what is the group name you would like to give it here. So I say HA1 is the group name, and I'm going to add all of the nodes and its resources to this group. Create. So now what I'm going to do is, yeah, so the group is HA1 is created, and here I have the resources already. One container is exist. I'm changing this resource option to the HA pair. So the disk should be on the shared storage, otherwise it does not migrate it on the HA configuration. So maybe I just create one more container which should be HA container 1, CentOS 8 container 1 here, and provide the password. Click next and select the template. Next, and disk size, and next. It should be on the shared storage, you should remember it, otherwise it does not migrate in case of disaster. So I'm giving the two cores here, and the memory is 1024 and swap is 1024. Next, and the network configuration, so if it is DNS or DHCP, it does not matter until unless you have the network enabled on both the nodes. So here my domain is techarkit.local, DNS 29.1 and say configuration is in place and finish. So now the container one, the CentOS 8 container one is also going to be created on the PVE one. You can see it's almost completed. Task is okay. Let's switch on the container and keep it live so that while migration, so it gives the feel of that. So I'm going to add that VM for the high availability, and the group is HA1 here, and the request state should be in started mode, and I'm adding the comment here for the identification. Say CentOS 8 container 1 on 01 container ID. You can see that now, which is enabled. So now, so I have another container as well, that is also I'm changing back to the maximum restarts is 1 and maximum relocate is 1 and adding to the group HA1 group. You can see both the virtual machines is part of the HA now. You can see the master is PV1 and PV2 and PV3 is idle or does not contain any active master data. Okay, so PV2 and PV3 does not have any resources. So now what I'm going to do is that to replicate this HA failover, so I'm disabling the network code on the PV1, so it just failed the network communication between the PV2 and PV3, and after is there any node communication issue, it takes at least 5 minutes to do the complete voting and the decide on the resource stuff. Then it will actually migrate this virtual machine. So let's wait for few minutes and see how this HA configuration is working here. Click on the data center and click on the HA and keep on monitoring the status of that, how the master is becoming the slave and the other slaves are becoming a master. Here you can see master is now PV1, but the old timestamp it says that is died already, so it does not take any decision yet still. But before 5 minutes, what it's going to do is that the heartbeat is going to monitor the node resources, whether node 2 or node 3 or node 4, whatever the node which is having the more resources, and they can able to get the containers or the migrate the containers so that they can be able to um, run them. So resources should be available on them. So that's why it takes a few minutes to monitor all the host, and after that it takes the decision. Then the outing will come, and the chorusing services will be outed by the nodes. Then which gets the major odds, that node would become a master here. So you can see here it's still taking some time to have the configuration. After a few minutes, what it will do is that it will complete the outing process. Then it decides that okay, which node should become a master. You can see now the PV3 become a master, and PV2 is slave and PV1 is slave. Okay, now in few minutes it migrate the containers to the PV3 and PV1, sorry, PV2 and PV3. Let's see here how it is going to migrate the containers. So the background process cannot be visible to us because it takes in a background and start the migration process. Then after that, we can see the virtual machine has been, the container has been moved to the another host, and the node value here will become a change. You can see that the fence is, the state is in fence. Now you can see the fence is executed because the node has already evacuated from the cluster. You can see now it is started. The state is started. You can see the containers has been migrated to the PVE2 and PVE3. So that's how the high availability works, and you can see any node become a master based on the hosting step. So if you again bring back the PVE1, so but the container stay on the PVE2 and PVE3 only, so it does not become it does not go back to the PVE1. Okay, you can see that. That's it. That's how the HA works.
For more updates, click on subscribe and click on bell button for latest notifications.